It was one of those mornings in Denver when the cold seemed to have a personality of its own, the kind of cold that crept through every layer of clothing, that made your breath hang in the air like small clouds of desperation. November had arrived with a vengeance, painting the streets in shades of gray and brown, stripping the last stubborn leaves from the trees that lined Washington Park. Marcus Thompson had been a firefighter for 16 years. He had seen things that would keep most people awake at night. He had pulled children from burning buildings, held the hands of elderly women as they took their last breaths, and watched families lose everything they owned in a matter of minutes. But nothing in his years of service had prepared him for what he would witness on this particular Tuesday morning. He was on his way to Station 12, driving his old pickup truck down South Downing Street, when he first noticed her. A small figure, no more than 7 years old, walking alone on the sidewalk. She was wearing a pink coat that had seen better days, the kind of coat that had probably been passed down from one child to another until the original color had faded into something closer to dusty rose. Her backpack was bright purple, a stark contrast against the muted tones of the autumn morning. What caught his attention was not just that she was alone at 7:30 in the morning, but what she was carrying. In her small hands, she clutched a brown paper bag, holding it carefully as if it contained something precious, and the direction she was walking made no sense. She was heading away from the elementary school, not toward it. Marcus slowed his truck, his instincts as both a firefighter and a father kicking in. He had a daughter once. Sarah would have been 23 this year. But that was a wound he kept carefully bandaged, a pain he had learned to carry without letting it consume him. He pulled over to the curb, watching the girl through his rear-view mirror. She turned left on Virginia Avenue, her small legs moving with determination, her grip on that paper bag never wavering. Something was wrong. Everything about this picture was wrong. If you're new here and you enjoy stories that touch your heart and remind you of the goodness in people, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and like this video. Your support helps us bring more stories like this one to life, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Marcus made a decision. He couldn't just drive away and pretend he hadn't seen her. 16 years of running toward danger instead of away from it had rewired something fundamental in his brain. He was incapable of looking the other way. He parked his truck and got out, the cold hitting him like a physical force. He was still in his civilian clothes, a heavy flannel jacket over a Denver Fire Department t-shirt, worn jeans and work boots. He didn't look particularly intimidating, which he hoped would work in his favor. The memories of Sarah came unbidden, as they often did in quiet moments. The last time he had seen her, she had been laughing about something, some silly video she had found online. He had been distracted, thinking about his shift the next day, and he hadn't really listened. He had said goodbye without looking up from his coffee. 2 hours later, she was gone. The drunk driver had survived. Marcus had visited him once in the hospital, not sure what he wanted to say or do. The man had been young, barely 23, and his eyes had been filled with a horror that would never fade. Marcus had stood in the doorway for 5 minutes, then turned and walked away. He never went back. Some days Marcus wondered what would have happened if he had been paying attention that morning. If he had looked at Sarah, really looked at her, memorized every detail of her face. Would it have changed anything? Would she still be alive? Or would he just have one more perfect memory to torture himself with? He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. He couldn't change the past. He could only move forward, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. He followed her at a distance, careful not to frighten her. She walked with purpose, clearly knowing exactly where she was going. 2 blocks later, she turned into an alley behind a row of businesses on South Pearl Street. Marcus hesitated at the entrance of the alley, watching as she approached a makeshift shelter constructed from cardboard boxes and a blue tarp. And then he saw him, a man, probably in his late 30s, sitting against the brick wall. His clothes were worn but clean, or as clean as they could be under the circumstances. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow, but when he saw the little girl approaching, something in him transformed. His face lit up with a warmth that seemed almost impossible given his circumstances. The girl ran the last few steps, throwing herself into his arms. He caught her, holding her tight, and for a moment Marcus forgot about the cold, about his shift starting in 40 minutes, about everything except this scene unfolding before him. "Daddy, I brought you breakfast," the girl said, her voice carrying in the still morning air. "Mrs. Patterson gave us extra today because it's getting cold. I saved my orange juice for you too." The man's voice cracked when he spoke. "Lily, sweetheart, you need to eat your breakfast. We talked about this." "I already ate, Daddy, I promise. I had cereal at the shelter before school. This is extra." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. The shelter. This little girl was living in a homeless shelter, and she was bringing her school breakfast to her father, who was living on the streets. The mathematics of poverty and love reduced to a brown paper bag and a carton of orange juice. He should have walked away. He should have gotten back in his truck and driven to the station. This wasn't his business. These weren't his people. But his feet refused to move. The man noticed him then. His body tensed, his arms instinctively pulling his daughter closer. There was fear in his eyes, the kind of fear that comes from having lost everything and being terrified of losing the one thing you have left. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Marcus said, raising his hand slightly. "I'm a firefighter, Station 12. I saw your daughter walking alone, and I wanted to make sure she was safe." The fear in the man's eyes didn't dissipate, but it transformed into something more complex. Shame, guilt, desperation. "She's supposed to be at school," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lily, you're going to be late." "I don't care about being late. I care about you eating." The simple conviction in her voice nearly broke Marcus. He thought about Sarah, about all the mornings she had sat across from him at the breakfast table, complaining about homework or boys or whatever drama was consuming her teenage world. He had taken those moments for granted, every single one of them. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, taking a careful step closer. The man hesitated. Trust didn't come easy when you lived on the streets. Trust could get you robbed, beaten, or worse. "David," he finally said. "David Chen, and this is my daughter Lily." "I'm Marcus Thompson." He gestured toward the paper bag. "That breakfast looks pretty good. Mind if I sit for a minute?" David's eyes narrowed, suspicion creeping back in. Why? It was a fair question. Why would a stranger want to sit in a freezing alley with a homeless man and his child? Marcus didn't have a good answer. He only had the truth. "Because I've got about 40 minutes before my shift starts, and something tells me you've got a story. I've always been a sucker for a good story." Lily looked up at her father, then at Marcus. "He looks nice, Daddy. His eyes are kind." Children had a way of seeing things adults couldn't. They hadn't yet learned to build walls around their perception, hadn't yet been taught to distrust their instincts. David seemed to recognize this too, because after a long moment, he nodded. Marcus sat down on an overturned crate, pulling his jacket tighter against the cold. The alley smelled of damp cardboard and something else, something that reminded him of the shelters he had visited during community outreach programs. It was the smell of survival at its most basic level. "So," Marcus said, "how did you end up here, David? If you don't mind me asking." David was quiet for a long time. Lily had settled next to him, her head resting against his arm, watching Marcus with curious eyes. Finally, David began to speak, his voice carrying the weight of every mistake, every misfortune, every moment that had led him to this alley. 18 months ago, I was a software engineer, worked for a tech company downtown. Good salary, nice apartment in Capitol Hill. Had a wife, had everything, you know, the American dream, or whatever they call it. He paused, his eyes focused on something far away, something only he could see. Then the company did a round of layoffs, 50% of the workforce gone in a single afternoon. I wasn't too worried at first. I had savings, I had skills. I figured I'd find something new within a few months. Marcus nodded. He had heard variations of this story before. The economy was a cruel master, chewing people up and spitting them out without warning. But the months passed, and nothing came through. The tech industry was saturated. Everyone was laying off. No one was hiring. My savings started to disappear. The apartment got too expensive. We moved to a cheaper place, then an even cheaper one. "And your wife?" Marcus asked carefully. David's jaw tightened. She couldn't handle it. The stress, the uncertainty, the constant fear. She started drinking. At first, it was just wine in the evenings to take the edge off. Then it was vodka in the mornings. Then it was anything she could get her hands on. Lily's small hand reached up and touched her father's face. "It's okay, Daddy. You don't have to talk about Mommy." David's eyes glistened, but he shook his head. "No, sweetie, it's okay. Sometimes talking about hard things helps them hurt a little less." He took a breath and continued. 8 months ago, she left. Just packed a bag one night and walked out. Didn't say goodbye to Lily. Didn't say goodbye to me. I came home from a job interview to find her wedding ring on the kitchen counter and half our stuff gone. "Did you try to find her?" Marcus asked gently. David nodded, his expression hardening. "I called her family, her friends, everyone I could think of. Her mother told me she had moved to Phoenix with some guy she met at a bar. She said she needed a fresh start, that being with us was suffocating her." "And Lily?" "She asks about her sometimes, not as much as she used to. I think she understands, in the way children understand things, that her mother made a choice, that she chose to leave." David's voice cracked. "How do you explain that to a 7-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that her mother loved her, but not enough to stay?" "You don't have to explain it," Marcus said quietly. "You just have to be there. You just have to show up every single day and love her enough for both of you." "That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'll always try to do." Marcus felt his stomach turn. He couldn't imagine walking out on a child. He would have given anything, everything, for one more day with Sarah. After she left, things fell apart fast. I couldn't afford childcare and couldn't find a job that would work around Lily's school schedule. The landlord evicted us when I missed the 3rd month of rent. We stayed with a friend for a while, then another friend, then we ran out of friends. "And now?" Marcus asked. "Now Lily stays at the family shelter on Broadway. They have space for women and children, but not for single men. So I sleep out here, close enough to be near her, but far enough that I don't cause problems for the shelter. She sneaks out in the mornings before school to bring me food, even though I've told her 100 times not to." "I can't let you be hungry, Daddy," Lily said, her voice small but fierce. "You're my daddy." Marcus felt something shift inside him. A door he had kept closed for 5 years was suddenly pushing open, light streaming through the cracks. "How do you manage?" he asked. "In the cold like this?" David shrugged. "You learn. You find warm spots. The library is good during the day. Some of the restaurants will let you sit if you buy a coffee. At night I have layers, and I've got a good sleeping bag a church group gave me. It's not ideal, but it's survivable." "And you're looking for work?" "Every day. But it's hard when you don't have an address, when you can't shower regularly, when all your nice clothes are in a storage unit you can't afford to access anymore. People take one look at you and see a homeless person. They don't see the software engineer with 10 years of experience. They don't see the father who would do anything for his daughter." Marcus thought about all the times he had walked past homeless individuals without a second glance. He had never been cruel, but he had never really seen them either. They were part of the urban landscape, as permanent and unremarkable as fire hydrants or street signs. Now, sitting in this alley, he was seeing David Chen for exactly who he was. A man, a father, a human being caught in circumstances beyond his control. "Lily," Marcus said, "what grade are you in?" Her eyes lit up. "Second grade. I'm the best reader in my class. I can read chapter books already." "That's impressive. I bet you're pretty smart." "The smartest," David said, pride momentarily overtaking the exhaustion in his voice. "She's going to be something special. That's why I can't let this situation become permanent. She deserves better. She deserves everything." Marcus looked at his watch. He had 20 minutes before his shift started. Chief Rodriguez would have his head if he was late again. But some things were more important than punctuality. "David, what if I told you I might be able to help?" Suspicion flared in David's eyes again. "Help how? No offense, but I've had a lot of people offer to help. Social workers, church volunteers, strangers on the street. They all mean well, but they don't understand how the system works. There are waiting lists for everything. Waiting lists for housing assistance, for job training programs, for mental health services. By the time your name comes up, you're either dead or you've somehow clawed your way out on your own." Marcus understood the cynicism. He had seen it before, that peculiar hopelessness that came from being failed by the very systems designed to help. But he also knew something David didn't. "My brother," Marcus said slowly, "owns a tech company, small operation, about 30 employees. They're actually looking for a senior developer right now. I can't promise anything, but I could give him a call, tell him about you." David stared at him. The hope that flickered in his eyes was almost painful to witness because it was so clearly mixed with fear. Hope was dangerous when you lived on the streets. Hope could destroy you faster than despair. "Why would you do that? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you." Marcus thought about the question. Why would he do it? He had no obligation to this man, no connection to his story. He could walk away right now and never think about David Chen again. But then he looked at Lily, at her bright purple backpack and her faded pink coat and her small hands that had carried breakfast through the cold morning air, just so her father wouldn't go hungry. And he knew. "Because I had a daughter once," Marcus said, his voice rough. "She died 5 years ago, car accident. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish I could have done more for her. That I don't wish I could have protected her from everything the world threw at her." He paused, swallowing the lump that had formed in his throat. "I can't save my daughter, but maybe I can help save yours." The alley fell silent. Even the sounds of the city seemed to fade, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "I don't know what to say," David whispered. "Don't say anything yet. Let me make the call first. See if there's anything there." Marcus stood, brushing off his jeans. "But David, I need you to do something for me. Anything." "That shelter on Broadway. There's a coordinator there, woman named Patricia Williams. She's a friend of mine. She runs a program for families trying to get back on their feet. Housing assistance, job placement, the whole thing. The waiting list is long, but if I give her a call, she might be able to bump you up." David's eyes widened. "You know Patricia?" "She's married to one of the guys at my station. Known her for 10 years. She's good people, David. The real deal." For the first time since Marcus had entered the alley, something like genuine hope appeared on David's face. Not the cautious, guarded hope from before, but something brighter, something that looked almost like belief. "I've talked to Patricia," David said. "She's the one who got Lily into the family shelter. She said the housing program has a 6-month wait. 6 months for most people, but Patricia has discretion. She can prioritize cases, especially when there's a child involved." Marcus pulled out his phone. "Give me your information. I'll make some calls when I get to the station." David recited his details, a phone number for a prepaid cell that he charged at the library when he could, an email address he checked on the public computers. Marcus typed everything into his notes app, his fingers moving quickly against the cold. "I need to go," Marcus said. My shift starts in 15 minutes and my chief will kill me if I'm late. But David, I want you to listen to me. He crouched down so he was at eye level with both father and daughter. What you're doing for Lily, staying close to her, making sure she knows you're here, making sure she knows she's loved, that's the most important thing. The circumstances are hard, but she knows her father loves her. That's going to matter more than anything else in the long run. David nodded, unable to speak. His eyes were wet, but he refused to let the tears fall. Not in front of Lily. Not in front of this stranger who had appeared in his alley like some kind of answer to prayers he had stopped believing in. "And you," Marcus said, turning to Lily, "you're incredibly brave, but you need to be in school, okay? Your daddy wants you to learn and grow and become everything you're meant to be. Can you promise me you'll go to school on time from now on?" Lily looked at her father, then back at Marcus. "But who will bring Daddy breakfast?" "I'll tell you what. If your daddy promises to go to the shelter and get breakfast with the morning group, will you promise to go straight to school?" "They don't let men in the morning," David started to say, but Marcus held up a hand. "Leave that to me. Patricia owes me a favor or two." Lily seemed to consider this. Finally she nodded. "Okay, I promise." Marcus stood, wincing slightly as his knees protested. 42 wasn't old, but mornings like this made it feel ancient. "I'll be in touch, David. Keep that phone charged." He walked out of the alley without looking back. He knew that if he looked back, he might not leave, and he needed to leave if he was going to make those calls. The station was buzzing when Marcus arrived, exactly 3 minutes late. Chief Rodriguez was standing in the bay, arms crossed, his expression somewhere between annoyed and curious. "Thompson, nice of you to join us." "Sorry, Chief, got caught up in something." Rodriguez was a good man, a 25-year veteran who had seen everything and forgotten nothing. He had a way of reading people that made Marcus uncomfortable, like he could see right through whatever facade you tried to put up. "Caught up in what exactly?" Marcus thought about lying. It would have been easier to claim traffic or a flat tire or any of the usual excuses, but something about the morning, about David and Lily and that cold alley made him want to tell the truth. "There's a homeless man a few blocks from here. He's got a 7-year-old daughter. I stopped to talk to him." Rodriguez's expression didn't change. And I think I might be able to help him. He's a software engineer who lost his job. Good man in a bad situation. I want to make some calls." The other firefighters in the bay had stopped what they were doing, listening without pretending not to. Martinez, the youngest member of the crew, spoke up first. "You need anything, Thompson? I know some people at the employment office." "Me too," said Henderson, a 30-year veteran who usually kept to himself. "My church runs a job training program. Might be worth looking into." Marcus looked around at his colleagues, at these men and women who spent their lives running toward danger, who saw humanity at its worst and its best every single day. They understood. They always understood. "Thanks, guys. I'll let you know." The chief was quiet for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. "That's why I like you, Thompson. 16 years on the job, and you still think you can save the world." "Not the world, just one family." "Same thing sometimes." Rodriguez nodded toward the office. "You've got 20 minutes before the morning briefing. Make your calls." Marcus didn't waste a second. He went to his locker first, pulling out the worn notebook he kept there. It was filled with contacts he had accumulated over the years, people he had helped and who had helped him in return. The informal network of favors that kept the city running when official channels failed. His first call was to Patricia Williams. She answered on the third ring, her voice warm despite the early hour. "Marcus Thompson, it's been too long. How's that bad back of yours?" "Still terrible. Listen, Patricia, I need a favor." "Of course you do. What is it?" He told her about David and Lily, about the alley and the paper bag, and the little girl who walked through the cold every morning to feed her father. Patricia listened without interrupting, her silence heavy with understanding. "I know David," she said when he finished. "Good man, terrible luck. I've been trying to find a way to move him up the housing list, but you know how it is. Politics and bureaucracy. Is there anything you can do?" Patricia sighed. "There's an emergency family reunification program. It's meant for cases where keeping the family together is critical for the child's well-being. I could make an argument for David and Lily. It would mean cutting some corners, calling in some favors of my own. Would it work?" "Maybe, probably. If I can get the paperwork through by the end of the week, I might be able to get them into transitional housing within 2 weeks." 2 weeks. David's sleeping in an alley, Patricia. It's November. "I know, but 2 weeks is better than 6 months, and I can probably get him access to the day shelter starting tomorrow. Hot meals, showers, a place to charge his phone and look for work." Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "That would be huge. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when they're in an apartment with a key that belongs to them." She paused. "You said something about a job possibility?" "That's my next call." "Good, because housing without income is just a slower kind of homelessness. You get him working, and I'll get him housed. Between the two of us, we might just give that little girl her father back." After hanging up with Patricia, Marcus stared at his phone for a long moment. His brother James was not an easy man. Successful, yes. Brilliant, absolutely. But easy? Never. They had grown up in the same house, raised by the same parents, shaped by the same circumstances. But where Marcus had become a firefighter, drawn to service and sacrifice, James had become an entrepreneur, drawn to innovation and profit. They loved each other in the way brothers do, with an undercurrent of competition and a reluctance to show vulnerability. Marcus hadn't asked James for anything in years, not since Sarah's funeral, when James had offered to pay for everything and Marcus had refused. Pride was a hell of a thing. But this wasn't about pride. This was about a man sleeping in an alley and a little girl walking through the cold with a paper bag clutched in her small hands. He made the call. "Marcus, it's 7 in the morning. Someone better be dead." "Good morning to you too, James." "Seriously, what's wrong? You never call." Marcus took a breath. "I need a favor." The silence on the other end was telling. James was waiting, calculating, already trying to figure out the angle. "I met a guy this morning, software engineer, 10 years of experience. He's homeless." And I want you to interview him." James laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want me to interview a homeless guy? Marcus, do you have any idea how many applications we get? I've got Stanford grads, MIT postdocs, people with patents and publications begging for a chance to work here. Why would I take a meeting with some guy off the street?" "Because he's good, James. Or he was good, before everything fell apart. And because he has a daughter." "Having a daughter doesn't make you a good engineer." "No, but being a good engineer makes you a good engineer, and having a daughter makes you desperate. Desperate people work harder than anyone." More silence. Marcus could hear James breathing, could almost hear the gears turning in his brother's head. "What's his story?" Marcus told him, about the layoffs and the downward spiral and the wife who left and the child who stayed, about the alley and the cold and the bright purple backpack, about the man who had lost everything except his love for his daughter. When he finished, James was quiet for a long time. "You know, I've been thinking lately about how random success is," James finally said. "How much of it comes down to luck, to being in the right place at the right time, to knowing the right people. I wasn't smarter or more talented than the guys who didn't make it. I was just luckier." "Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. What I'm saying is, I understand that this guy's situation could have been mine if a few things had gone differently. That doesn't mean I can hire everyone who's had bad luck. But one person, one qualified person who just needs a chance. Maybe that's something I can do. Marcus felt hope rising in his chest, cautious but real. He is qualified, James, really qualified. His resume shows expertise in languages your company uses. He worked on projects that are similar to what you're developing. If you saw his resume without knowing his circumstances, you'd want to interview him. Send me the resume first. If it looks legit, I'll set up an interview. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. What? If I interview him and he's not right for the position, I'm not going to hire him out of pity. That wouldn't be fair to him or to my team. I'll give him a chance, a real chance, but he has to earn the job. That's all he's asking for. That's all anyone in his situation is asking for, a chance. Send me his resume, James finally said. If he's got one. He's got one. I'll get it to you today. No promises, Marcus. If he's not qualified, he's not qualified. I'm not going to jeopardize my company for a charity case. He's not a charity case. He's a human being who got knocked down and needs a hand getting back up. That's all any of us are, when you really think about it. James made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been dismissal. I'll look at the resume. That's all I'm promising. That's all I'm asking. After he hung up, Marcus sat in the small office, staring at the wall. He had done what he could, made the calls, called in the favors. The rest was up to David, up to Patricia, up to James, up to a universe that sometimes seemed designed to crush people and sometimes, inexplicably, decided to lift them up. Hey, Thompson, Rodriguez's voice came from the doorway. Briefing in 5. On my way, Chief. Marcus stood, tucking his phone into his pocket. There was work to do, people to save, buildings to protect, the endless grinding work of a firefighter in a city that never stopped needing help. But even as he walked to the briefing room, even as he sat through reports about equipment maintenance and shift schedules and the latest fire prevention initiatives, his mind kept drifting back to that alley, to David's hollow eyes and Lily's bright ones, to the brown paper bag that contained more love than Marcus had seen in years. He didn't know if his calls would make a difference. He didn't know if David would get the job or the housing or any of the things he needed. But he knew he had tried, and sometimes trying was the only thing you could control. The shift was brutal. 3 calls in the first 4 hours, a kitchen fire in a restaurant on South Broadway, a car accident on Interstate 25 with multiple injuries, a medical emergency at a nursing home that required CPR and ended with a woman in her 80s being loaded into an ambulance, her family gathered on the sidewalk, praying. Marcus moved through it all on autopilot, his body doing the work his mind couldn't focus on. He was thinking about David, about whether he had gotten Marcus's message about the day shelter, about whether Lily had gone to school, about whether any of this would matter. At noon, his phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. David came in this morning, got him set up with day services. He cried when I told him about the housing timeline. Good tears. Marcus read the message 3 times, then he put his phone away and went back to work. The afternoon brought more calls, a false alarm at an elementary school, a structure fire in an abandoned warehouse that took 2 hours to contain, a domestic dispute that turned into a barricade situation, the fire department standing by while police negotiated. By the time Marcus's shift ended at 7, he was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that went beyond physical, that seeped into your bones and made everything feel heavy. He should have gone home, should have eaten something and showered and fallen into bed. Instead, he found himself driving toward the alley on South Pearl Street. It was dark now, the city lit by streetlights and neon signs. The alley was quiet, the blue tarp visible as a darker shadow against the darkness. Marcus parked and got out, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. He walked to the entrance of the alley and stopped. David was there. He was sitting in the same spot as before, but something was different. He was cleaner, his face shaved, his hair combed, and in his hands he held a phone, its screen glowing in the darkness. "Marcus?" David's voice was uncertain, hopeful. "Yeah, just checking in." David stood, and before Marcus could react, he was being hugged. Not a casual embrace, but a desperate, grateful, overwhelming hug from a man who had been drowning and had just felt solid ground beneath his feet. "Patricia called me," David said, his voice muffled against Marcus's shoulder. "She said you made it happen. The day shelter, the housing program, everything." "I just made a call. She did the work." "No." David pulled back, and Marcus could see tears on his face. "You saw me. That's what you did. Everyone else looks right through people like me, but you saw me." Marcus didn't know what to say. He wasn't good at receiving gratitude. Firefighters were trained to act, to respond, to solve problems and move on. They weren't trained for this, for the emotional aftermath of actually connecting with someone. "There's something else," Marcus said. "My brother James, he runs a tech company. I sent him your resume this afternoon. He wants to interview you." David stared at him. The tears were flowing freely now, and he made no effort to stop them. "An interview? A real interview?" "Friday afternoon, can you make it?" "I can make it. I'll crawl there if I have to." Marcus smiled. "I don't think that'll be necessary. Patricia said she can help with clothes, professional attire, and there's a shower at the day shelter. You show up looking like the software engineer you are, and let your skills do the talking." "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to thank me. Just do me one favor." "Anything." "When you get back on your feet, when you're working and you've got a place to live, and Lily's got everything she needs, find someone else who's struggling. Help them the way I helped you. That's how this works. That's how we all get through." David nodded, unable to speak. Marcus looked up at the sky, at the few stars visible through the city lights. "And David, keep Lily close. Time goes faster than you think. One day she's bringing you breakfast in an alley, and the next she's grown and gone, and you're wondering where all the years went." He thought about Sarah, about her smile and her laugh and the way she used to tease him about his cooking, about the phone call that had shattered his world, the police officer's voice telling him there had been an accident, that his daughter was gone. "I'll never take her for granted," David said quietly, "not a single moment." "Good." Marcus turned to go, then stopped. "Oh, and one more thing. When you get that job, and you will get it, remember that my brother is a pain in the ass. But he's fair. Work hard, and he'll see it." David laughed, a real laugh, the first one Marcus had heard from him. "I'll remember that." "And David, one more thing." "Yeah?" "Get yourself to the library today. Use their computers to polish up that resume. Make sure it's perfect before I send it to James. He's a stickler for details." "I will. I have a version saved in my email. I've been updating it every time I have computer access." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Good man. The fact that you've kept trying, kept maintaining that resume, kept believing that things could change, that tells me everything I need to know about you." David looked down at Lily, who was watching the exchange with wide, hopeful eyes. "I never stopped believing because I couldn't stop believing. Giving up wasn't an option when I have her depending on me." That's exactly what James needs to hear in that interview. That's exactly the kind of person any company would be lucky to have. The moment stretched between them. Two men from completely different worlds, connected by circumstance and compassion. Marcus extended his hand, and David shook it firmly. "I'll be in touch by tonight," Marcus said. "Keep that phone charged." "I will. The library opens at 10. I'll be there waiting." Marcus walked back to his truck, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. He didn't know if everything would work out. Life was too complicated for guarantees, but he had done what he could, and sometimes that was enough. The drive home was quiet, the streets almost empty in the late evening hour. Marcus turned on the radio, letting the soft sounds of jazz fill the cab. He thought about the morning, about how a simple detour had led him to that alley. about how a little girl with a paper bag had reminded him of everything he had lost and everything he could still give. When he got home, his apartment felt less empty than usual. It was the same small space, the same second-hand furniture, the same photographs of Sarah on every available surface. But something had shifted. The grief was still there, would always be there, but it wasn't the only thing anymore. He made himself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table, eating in silence. Then he pulled out his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in months. "Marcus?" His sister's voice was surprised but warm. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah, Claire. Everything's okay. I just wanted to hear your voice." They talked for an hour about nothing and everything, about Claire's kids and Marcus's work and their parents' upcoming anniversary. Normal, mundane, beautiful things. When he finally hung up, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt connected to his family, to his community, to the strange and wonderful web of humanity that surrounded him every day. He fell asleep thinking about Lily's bright purple backpack and her father's tears of gratitude. And for the first time in 5 years, his dreams were not haunted by memories of what he had lost, but filled with hopes for what might still be. The days that followed were a blur of activity and anticipation. Marcus kept in touch with Patricia, who updated him on David's progress. The day shelter was helping him regain his footing. He had access to computers, to phones, to the basic necessities of job hunting in the modern world. Lily was going to school on time, Patricia reported. She was thriving, actually, now that she knew her father was being cared for. The counselor at her school had noticed a change in her demeanor. She smiled more, participated more, worried less. On Friday, Marcus received a text from David. Interview in 2 hours. Nervous as hell, wearing a suit Patricia found at a donation center. Wish me luck. Marcus replied immediately, "You don't need luck. You've got skills and determination. Those are worth more than luck any day." Another text came through. "Patricia helped me practice interview questions all morning. She's amazing. I don't know how she does it, helping so many people while still making each one feel like they're the only one that matters. That's what makes her good at her job. Now stop texting me and go ace that interview." Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Whatever happens today, I want you to know that you changed my life just by stopping that morning. You reminded me that I wasn't invisible, that someone could still see me. Marcus stared at the screen for a long moment, his eyes burning. He typed back, "You were never invisible. You were just waiting for someone to look in the right direction. Now go show my brother what you're made of." He put his phone away and tried to focus on his work, but every few minutes he found himself glancing at the clock, calculating where David would be in the interview process. He imagined him sitting across from James, trying to hide the nervousness, trying to prove that he was still the capable professional he had been before everything fell apart. The calls came and went. A small fire in a commercial kitchen, a medical assist for an elderly man who had fallen, a training exercise that lasted most of the afternoon. At 5 o'clock his phone buzzed again, a text from James. "I don't know what the hell you did, but that guy is good, really good. Offered him the position. He cried in my office, on my expensive carpet." Marcus laughed out loud, drawing strange looks from the other firefighters in the station. Another text followed. "I'm not going to lie, it was awkward at first. He walked in looking terrified, like he expected me to throw him out any second. But once we started talking about code, about systems architecture and problem-solving approaches, he transformed. The nervous, homeless guy disappeared, and this sharp, confident engineer took his place. He knew things that some of my senior developers don't know." "Told you he was qualified." "You did. But Marcus, it wasn't just his technical skills. It was the way he talked about why he wanted this job. He said he wanted to be someone his daughter could be proud of. He said he wanted to show her that no matter how hard you fall, you can always get back up. I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I've never heard anyone say anything like that." Marcus felt a lump forming in his throat. He typed back, "So you hired him?" "I hired him. He starts Monday, full-time, full benefits, competitive salary, and I'm setting aside some of his first paycheck for a wardrobe upgrade. Can't have my developers showing up in donation center suits." "James." "Yeah?" "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for seeing something worth saving. I just followed your lead." He called David immediately. The man answered on the first ring. "He offered me the job." David's voice was shaking. "He actually offered me the job." "I know. James just texted me." "I don't know what to say. I don't know how to process this." "Start by breathing. Then call Lily. Tell her that her daddy got a job. She's going to be so happy. She's been so worried. Every night at the shelter she asks if I'm okay, if I found work, if we're going to be together again. And now you can tell her yes to all of it." David was crying again. Marcus could hear it through the phone, the sobs of a man who had been holding on by his fingernails for so long and had finally found solid ground. "There's more," David managed. "Patricia called this afternoon. The emergency housing came through. We're approved. We can move in next week." Marcus felt tears pricking at his own eyes. He blinked them back, looking up at the ceiling of the station. "That's amazing, David. That's really amazing. A job, an apartment, a chance to be a father again, a real father, not someone who sleeps in an alley while his daughter worries about him." David took a shaky breath. "This morning I was homeless. Tonight I have a future. How is that even possible?" Marcus thought about the question. How was it possible? How did life turn on such small hinges? A man takes a different route to work. He sees a child walking alone. He decides to stop instead of driving past. And suddenly everything changes. "Sometimes," Marcus said slowly, "the universe puts people in our path for a reason. You were in my path, David, and I like to think there's a reason for that. Do you believe that, in reasons and fate and all of that?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. He wasn't a religious man, not in the traditional sense, but he had seen too much, experienced too much to believe that everything was random. "I believe that we're all connected," he said, "that what happens to one of us affects all of us. I believe that when we help each other, we're helping ourselves. And I believe that there's more good in the world than bad, even when it doesn't feel that way." "I want to believe that too." "Then believe it. Start with tonight. Go pick up Lily from the shelter. Take her out for dinner somewhere nice. Not too nice. You've got to save money for that apartment, but nice enough to celebrate." "I don't even know how to thank you." "You'll figure it out. Now go. Go be with your daughter." Marcus hung up and sat for a long moment, the phone in his hand. Around him the station hummed with its usual activity. Firefighters playing cards in the common room, someone making dinner in the kitchen, the scanner crackling with distant calls. Chief Rodriguez appeared beside him. "Good news." "Yeah, really good news." "That guy you were helping, the one from the alley? He got a job and housing. He's going to be okay." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "You know what I've always admired about you, Thompson? My stunning good looks." The chief snorted. "Your stubbornness. You see a problem, you grab onto it, and you don't let go until it's fixed. Most people would have walked past that alley, would have told themselves it wasn't their business. Not you. I couldn't just leave him there, not after I saw Lily. That's what I mean. Some people look at the world and see problems too big to solve. You look at the world and see problems small enough to tackle, one person at a time." Marcus thought about that, about all the people he hadn't helped over the years, all the homeless individuals he had walked past without a second glance, all the suffering he had ignored because it was too overwhelming to confront. "I wish I did more," he said quietly. "I wish I helped more people." "You do what you can. That's all any of us can do." Rodriguez clapped him on the shoulder. "Now get some rest. You look like hell." "Thanks, Chief." Always knew I could count on you for encouragement." But Marcus was smiling as he said it, and as he walked to the bunk room to catch a few hours of sleep before the next call, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. He felt like he mattered, not because of the lives he saved in fires, although those mattered too, but because of a little girl with a paper bag and a father who loved her more than life itself. Because of a phone call and a favor and a chance taken on someone who needed it. That night, Marcus dreamed of Sarah. But it wasn't the usual dream, the one where she was reaching for him and he couldn't quite grasp her hand. In this dream, she was smiling, her face lit with the same joy he remembered from her childhood. "You did good, Dad," she said in the dream. "You did really good." When he woke, he was crying. But for the first time in 5 years, the tears weren't only grief. There was something else mixed in, something that felt like healing. A week later, Marcus received an invitation, handwritten on actual paper, slipped under the door of the fire station. "You are invited to a housewarming celebration, the Chen family residence, Saturday, 4 p.m. Your presence is the best gift we could receive." Marcus had never been good at parties. Even before Sarah's death, he had preferred small gatherings to large ones. But there was no way he was missing this. He arrived at the address on Saturday afternoon, a modest apartment building in a quiet neighborhood near Cheeseman Park. Not fancy, but clean and well-maintained. The kind of place where families grew and children played and ordinary life happened. The building had a small courtyard with a few trees, their leaves turning golden in the autumn light. A couple of kids were riding bikes on the sidewalk, their laughter carrying in the cool air. It was the kind of neighborhood Marcus had always imagined living in, back when he thought his future would include grandchildren and Sunday dinners and all the normal things that normal families did. David met him at the door. He looked like a different person, clean-shaven, well-rested, wearing casual clothes that fit properly. But the biggest change was in his eyes. The hollow desperation was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like hope. His posture had changed too. In the alley, David had seemed smaller somehow, as if the weight of his circumstances had physically compressed him. Now he stood straight, his shoulders back, his chin up. He looked like a man who belonged in the world again. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Wouldn't miss it." The apartment was small but bright, filled with afternoon sunlight. Lily was there, of course, wearing a new dress and showing off her room to anyone who would listen. Patricia was there too, along with several other people from the shelter and the day services program. James had come, which surprised Marcus more than he would admit. There were streamers and balloons, the cheap kind you could get at the dollar store, but to this family they might as well have been made of gold. A banner hung across one wall, clearly made by Lily, with the words "Welcome Home," spelled out in wobbly letters and surrounded by hearts and stars. "Nice place," James said, handing David a bottle of wine, "although I'm not sure how you afford it on what I'm paying you." David laughed. "It's subsidized housing, part of the program Patricia runs. I'll be paying market rate in a year once I'm back on my feet. By then, you'll probably have earned a raise. That fix you implemented last week saved us 12 hours of server downtime." "Just doing my job." "No," James said, his expression serious. "You're doing more than your job. You're proving that potential doesn't disappear just because circumstances get hard. A lot of people in your situation would have given up. You didn't." David glanced at Marcus. "I had help." "We all need help sometimes. The question is what we do with it." Lily came running up, grabbing Marcus's hand. "Mr. Marcus, come see my room. I have my own bed and my own desk, and Daddy put stars on the ceiling." Marcus let himself be dragged away, Lily's excitement infectious. Her room was small, barely bigger than a closet, but to her it was a palace. A narrow bed with a purple comforter, a desk where she could do homework. And on the ceiling, glow-in-the-dark stars arranged in patterns that Marcus recognized as actual constellations. "Daddy said the Big Dipper points to the North Star," Lily explained. "He said if you can find the North Star, you can always find your way home." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He thought about David, sleeping in that alley for months, always staying close enough to the shelter to see the building where his daughter slept, following his own North Star. "Your daddy is a smart man," Marcus said. "He's the smartest, and he's got a job now, and we have a home, and I don't have to bring him breakfast anymore because he eats breakfast with me every morning." "Every morning?" "Every single one, and he makes pancakes on Sundays. He's not very good at it yet, but we're practicing." Marcus laughed, the sound surprising him. When was the last time he had laughed like that? He couldn't remember. They rejoined the party, Lily still holding Marcus's hand. The apartment was crowded now, filled with conversation and laughter. Someone had brought a cake, and David was cutting it into pieces, making sure everyone got a slice. Marcus found a quiet corner and watched. Patricia was talking to James about the program she ran, trying to convince him to sponsor more families. James was listening with the calculating expression that meant he was already running the numbers, figuring out how to turn charity into good business. David was moving through the crowd, thanking everyone, his gratitude genuine and overwhelming. Every few minutes he would glance at Lily as if making sure she was still there, still real, still his. And Lily was the center of attention, as children often are. She told anyone who would listen about her school, her friends, her room with the stars on the ceiling. She was 7 years old, and the world was full of wonder. Marcus thought about all the things that had to happen for this moment to occur. A layoff at a tech company, a wife who couldn't cope, a spiral into homelessness, a little girl who loved her father enough to walk through the cold with a paper bag, a firefighter who took a different route to work, a phone call, a favor, a chance. So many moments, so many decisions, so many small hinges on which everything turned. Deep thoughts? Patricia appeared beside him, holding a glass of wine. "Just thinking about how strange life is." "Strange in a good way today." "Yeah, today it's good." Patricia nodded toward David and Lily, who were now sitting together on the couch, Lily curled against her father's side. "You know what David told me when I asked him what the hardest part of being homeless was?" "What?" "He said it wasn't the cold or the hunger or the danger. It was the invisibility, the way people looked right through him, as if he didn't exist. He said he felt like he was disappearing, piece by piece, until there was nothing left." Marcus thought about all the homeless individuals he had passed over the years, all the faces he had never really seen. "And then you saw him," Patricia continued. "You stopped and you looked and you saw him. That's what started all of this." "I just made a few phone calls." "No, you did more than that. You reminded him that he was worth seeing. That's the thing people don't understand about homelessness. It's not just about houses and jobs. It's about being recognized as human, being treated like you matter." Marcus didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to being praised, to having his actions analyzed and appreciated. He was used to doing his job and moving on. "I should go," he said. "Early shift tomorrow." "Of course, but Marcus." "Yeah?" "Thank you from all of us. Thank you." He said his goodbyes, hugging David and high-fiving Lily and exchanging a gruff nod with James. Then he walked out into the cool evening air, the sounds of the party fading behind him. The walk to his truck took him past a park where children were playing, their laughter carrying in the evening air, past a coffee shop where a couple sat in the window, holding hands across the table, past a homeless man sitting on a bench, his belongings in a shopping cart beside him. Marcus stopped. He looked at the man, really looked at him, saw the weathered face and the tired eyes and the clothes that had seen too many nights on the street. A month ago, he might have walked past without a second glance. But something had changed in him since that November morning. He couldn't see homeless people the same way anymore, couldn't pretend they were just part of the scenery. "You okay?" Marcus asked. The man looked up, surprised. People didn't usually stop. People didn't usually see him. "I'm all right, just resting." "You need anything? Food? Water?" "I'm okay. There's a shelter a few blocks from here. They've got dinner at 7. Marcus studied the man for a moment. He looked to be in his 50s, with the kind of weathered skin that came from years of exposure. His eyes were intelligent, alert, but there was a weariness in them that spoke of too many hard nights and too few good ones. "How long have you been on the streets?" The man shrugged. 3 years, give or take. Lost my job when the warehouse closed down. Wife died 2 years before that. Cancer. Couldn't keep up with the medical bills even after she was gone. You know how it goes. Marcus nodded. He was starting to understand exactly how it went, how the systems that were supposed to help people often left them stranded, how quickly a stable life could unravel when a few things went wrong at once. "Did you ever work in construction or have any technical skills?" The man's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious of the question. "Why do you ask?" "I know some people. There's a program that helps folks get back on their feet. Job training, housing assistance, the whole thing." Marcus pulled out his wallet and found a business card, one of the ones Patricia had given him. "This is a woman who helps people get back on their feet. Housing, jobs, the whole thing. Her name is Patricia. Tell her Marcus Thompson sent you." The man took the card, studying it with cautious hope. "Why are you helping me? You don't know me." "No, I don't. But someone helped a friend of mine when he was in your situation, made me realize that we're all connected, that helping each other is how we get through." The man nodded slowly. "I'll call her tomorrow." "Good. And hey, stay warm tonight. It's going to get cold." Marcus continued to his truck, got in, and drove home. The city passed by outside his windows, a blur of lights and shadows. Somewhere in that city, David Chen was putting his daughter to bed in their new apartment. Somewhere, a homeless man was holding a business card, thinking about tomorrow. And somewhere, in a place Marcus couldn't see or touch, he liked to think that Sarah was watching, that she was proud of the father she had known, the man who had lost everything and found a way to keep giving. Months passed. Winter turned to spring, then to summer. Marcus continued his work at the station, fighting fires and saving lives and doing the 1,000 small things that made up a firefighter's existence. He and David stayed in touch, coffee once a month, texts in between. David was thriving at James's company, quickly becoming one of the top developers on the team. Lily was finishing 2nd grade with straight A's and had just been selected for the school's gifted program. The apartment had become a home. There were photos on the walls now, new memories joining old ones, a garden on the small balcony where Lily was learning to grow tomatoes, a cat named Whiskers, adopted from a shelter, who spent most of his time sleeping in the afternoon sunlight. It was ordinary. It was wonderful. It was everything David had dreamed of during those long nights in the alley when hope had seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. On the anniversary of their first meeting, David invited Marcus to dinner. Lily had helped cook, which meant the pasta was slightly overcooked and the salad was mostly croutons. It was perfect. "I want to show you something," David said, after they had eaten. He led Marcus to a small office area in the corner of the apartment. On the desk was a computer, its screen showing a website. "What's this?" "A non-profit I'm starting, with Patricia's help. It's called Second Chances. We're going to help people in situations like I was in, job training, housing assistance, the whole thing." Marcus stared at the screen. The website was professional, with photos of people who had been helped and stories of transformation. We've already helped 3 families in the last month, David continued, his voice filled with quiet pride. 2 of them got jobs. 1 of them is in transitional housing now, just like I was. And we're just getting started. How long have you been working on this? 6 months. It started as an idea, but then I talked to James, and he offered to help with funding, and Patricia's on the board. And there's this firefighter I know who I was hoping might get involved. Marcus turned to look at David. The man he had met in that alley was still there, somewhere beneath the surface. But he had been transformed, refined by suffering and saved by help that came just in time. You went through the worst experience of your life, Marcus said slowly, and your first thought was how to help other people going through the same thing. It wasn't my first thought, David admitted. My first thought was relief, and then gratitude, and then anger, actually. Anger at a system that lets people fall through the cracks so easily. And then I realized that anger is only useful if you turn it into action. That's a pretty mature way to look at it. I had a lot of time to think. All those nights in the alley, staring at the stars, wondering if things would ever get better. I made myself a promise that if I ever got back on my feet, I would spend the rest of my life helping other people do the same. What would you need me to do? Just what you did for me. Look for people who need help. Point them in our direction. You see more of this city in a day than most people see in a year. If you spot someone who's struggling, someone who just needs a hand, let us know. Just what you did for me. Look for people who need help. Point them in our direction. You see more of this city in a day than most people see in a year. If you spot someone who's struggling, someone who just needs a hand, let us know. Marcus thought about it, about all the people he passed every day, all the stories he never heard, all the David Chens sleeping in alleys, all the Lilies bringing breakfast through the cold. I'm in, he said. David's smile was the brightest thing in the room. I knew you would be. There's one condition, though. Name it. Once a month we get together for dinner. You, me, and Lily. She can cook if she wants. David laughed. Deal. Although I'm not sure your digestive system can handle her cooking experiments. I've survived 16 years of firehouse chili. I can survive anything. Lily came running in then, whiskers in her arms. She had grown taller in the past year, her face losing some of its childish roundness. Did you tell him about second chances? Did he say yes? He said yes. Lily grinned and threw her arms around Marcus, careful not to squish the cat. I knew you would. You're the best person in the whole world. I don't know about that. I think there's some competition. No. She pulled back, her expression serious. There's not. You saved us, Mr. Marcus. You saw us when nobody else did. Marcus knelt down so he was at her level, just as he had that first morning in the alley. You know what, Lily? You saved your dad first. Every morning, walking through the cold, bringing him breakfast, reminding him that he mattered. That's what real love looks like. That's what real bravery looks like. Lily's eyes were shining. Really? Really? Don't ever forget that. No matter how old you get, no matter where life takes you, remember that you were brave when it counted, that you loved your father when loving him was the hardest thing in the world. She hugged him again, tighter this time, and Marcus held her. This small person who had started everything, this child with a paper bag and a heart bigger than anyone knew. When he left the apartment that night, the city looked different. Not the buildings or the streets or the lights. Those were the same as they had always been, but Marcus saw them differently now. He saw possibilities. In every alley, every shelter, every face he passed. He saw people waiting to be seen, stories waiting to be heard, lives waiting to be changed. He thought about David's question from that morning in the alley. Why would you do that? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you. Now he had an answer. He helped because helping was what made him human, because the line between those who needed help and those who could give it was thinner than anyone knew. because he had lost his daughter and had learned, through the hardest possible lesson, that love didn't end when someone was gone. It transformed, it grew, it found new places to live. Sarah was still with him, in every life he saved, in every hand he reached out. She was there when he noticed a little girl walking alone with a paper bag. She was there when he sat in an alley and listened to a stranger's story. She was there when he made the calls that changed everything. She would always be there, and as long as she was, Marcus would keep looking, keep seeing, keep helping. Because that was what it meant to be human, to see each other, to reach for each other, to lift each other up when the weight of the world became too heavy to bear alone. The next morning, Marcus took a different route to work again, not because he expected to find another David or another Lily, but because he knew now that they were out there, everywhere, waiting, hoping, surviving. And maybe, if he looked carefully enough, he would see them. Just as he had that cold November morning, when a little girl with a bright purple backpack had reminded him that love was the only thing that mattered, the only thing that ever had. The sun was rising over Denver, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. Another day was beginning, another chance to make a difference. Marcus smiled, turned up the radio and drove toward whatever was waiting. And somewhere in the city, in a modest apartment with stars on the ceiling, a little girl was waking up to the smell of pancakes. Her father was humming in the kitchen, practicing his Sunday morning tradition. A cat was stretching in the sunlight, and a life that had seemed impossible just a year ago was now completely, wonderfully ordinary. That was the miracle. Not the dramatic rescue or the life-changing phone call. The miracle was the ordinary. The unremarkable gift of waking up in your own home, with people who loved you, with a day ahead full of nothing special and everything important. David would never forget the alley. He would never forget the cold and the hunger and the nights when he wondered if he would survive until morning. Those memories were part of him now, scars that would never fully fade. But they weren't the whole story. They were the beginning of a story that was still being written, a story about second chances and unexpected kindness and the strange ways that people found each other in a world that often seemed designed to keep them apart. Lily came running into the kitchen, her hair wild from sleep, her pajamas covered with cartoon cats. "Daddy, are these pancakes for us?" "Who else would they be for?" "I don't know, maybe Whiskers." "Whiskers gets his own food. These are people pancakes." She giggled, climbing onto her chair at the small kitchen table. David placed a plate in front of her, 3 pancakes arranged in the shape of a smiley face, blueberry eyes, and a banana slice smile. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "I'm really glad we live here." David looked at his daughter, at her bright eyes and her messy hair and her complete trust that the world was a good place. He thought about everything they had been through, everything they had survived. "Me too, Lily, me too." Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Traffic building on the highways, people heading to work, to church, to breakfast with friends. A fire truck pulled out of Station 12, its sirens breaking the Sunday morning quiet, heading towards someone who needed help. And in that apartment with stars on the ceiling, a father and daughter ate pancakes together, the morning sun streaming through the windows, Whiskers purring at their feet. It was ordinary, it was beautiful, it was everything. The call that changed everything hadn't been a single moment. It had been 100 moments, 1,000 small choices, an infinite chain of people seeing each other and choosing to help. Marcus making that first call to Patricia. Patricia finding a way through the bureaucracy. James taking a chance on someone who looked nothing like his usual hires. David showing up and proving himself. Lily never losing faith that her father would come back to her. Each link in the chain was essential. Remove any one of them, and the whole thing would have fallen apart. But together, they held. Together, they lifted a family out of the darkness and into the light. That was how change happened, not through grand gestures or dramatic interventions, through ordinary people making ordinary choices to see each other, to help each other, to believe that things could be better. David finished his pancakes and started on the dishes. Lily ran to her room to get dressed, talking to Whiskers as she went. The day stretched ahead of them, full of nothing special and everything important. Later they would go to the park. Lily would play on the swings while David sat on a bench, watching her, still sometimes surprised that this was his life now. They would get ice cream from the truck that came by every Sunday. They would walk home through streets that David had once wandered homeless, and he would marvel at how the same places could hold such different memories. But first there were dishes to wash, normal, boring, wonderful dishes. David's phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Thinking about you guys this morning. Hope those pancakes are improving." David smiled, typing back, "Still working on it. Lily says they're perfect. She's a liar, but a sweet one." Marcus responded with a laughing emoji. Then a moment later, another text. "Found someone yesterday. Woman with 2 kids, lost her job 3 months ago, sent her to Patricia." "Good. I'll follow up with Patricia on Monday." "I knew you would. That's why I texted." David put down his phone and looked out the window at the city waking up below. Somewhere out there, a woman with 2 children was starting the same journey he had started. She was scared and lost and probably wondering if things would ever get better. But she had been seen. Someone had stopped and looked and chosen to help. The chain was already forming, link by link. That was what Marcus had taught him. That was what he would spend the rest of his life teaching others. You can't save the world. You can only save one person at a time. But one person at a time, the world gets saved. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed in her favorite purple outfit, her hair now in 2 lopsided ponytails that she had clearly done herself. "Daddy, can we go to the park?" "In a little bit. Let me finish the dishes first." "Can I help?" "Of course, you can dry." She grabbed a towel and stood beside him, taking each dish as he washed it, drying it with exaggerated care. They worked in companionable silence, the rhythm of the task comfortable and familiar. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "Do you remember when we didn't have a house?" David's hands stilled in the soapy water. They didn't talk about that time often. He wasn't sure how much Lily remembered, how much she understood. "I remember. I was scared sometimes, but I wasn't scared about you." "What do you mean?" Lily looked up at him, her expression serious. "I was scared about the cold and the dark and not having a real bed, but I was never scared that you would leave me. I knew you would always be there." David felt tears prickling at his eyes. He dried his hands and knelt down to her level. "I will always be there, Lily, no matter what, that's a promise." "I know, Daddy. That's why I brought you breakfast, because you were always there for me, even when you were cold and hungry. So I wanted to be there for you too." David pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. The tears were falling now, and he didn't bother to hide them. "You're the bravest person I know," he whispered into her hair. "The bravest and the kindest and the best." "I learned it from you." They stayed like that for a long moment, father and daughter, holding on to each other in a kitchen, filled with sunlight and the smell of pancakes. The past was behind them, the future was ahead, and the present was exactly where they needed to be. Later, when the dishes were done, and Lily was finally ready to go outside, David took one last look around the apartment. At the photos on the wall, at Whiskers sleeping in his spot by the window, at the stars on Lily's ceiling, visible through her open door. This was home, not perfect, not fancy, but home, a place where they belonged, a place where they were safe. He thought about Marcus, about the cold November morning when a stranger had stopped and looked and seen him, about the phone call that had changed everything, about the chain of kindness that had lifted them out of the darkness. Someday he would tell Lily the full story. He would tell her about the alley and the cold and the nights when he wondered if they would survive. He would tell her about Marcus and Patricia and James and all the people who had helped them when help seemed impossible. But not today. Today was for the park and the swings and the ice cream truck. Today was for being a normal father with a normal daughter, living a normal life. The extraordinary could wait. The ordinary was miracle enough. David took Lily's hand and walked out the door, into the sunlight, into the beautiful, messy, wonderful world that was waiting for them. Behind them, Whiskers stretched and yawned and went back to sleep. The sun rose higher over Denver, another day beginning in a city full of people with stories nobody knew. In the park, children were playing. In the coffee shops, couples were laughing. In the fire stations, firefighters were waiting for the next call. And in one modest apartment, with stars on the ceiling and pancakes on the counter, and a cat named Whiskers sleeping in the sun, a family that had almost been lost was now exactly where they belonged. Together, home safe. That was the ending, but it was also a beginning, because in every ending there is a new story waiting to start, a new chain waiting to form, a new person waiting to be seen. Somewhere in the city, right now, someone is struggling. Someone is sleeping in an alley, hoping their child stays warm in a shelter a few blocks away. Someone is wondering if anyone will ever see them, if anyone will ever stop. Maybe you'll be the one who stops. Maybe you'll be the link that starts a chain. Maybe you'll make the call that changes everything. It doesn't have to be much. A moment of attention, a word of kindness, a recognition that the person in front of you is a person, with a story, with value, with the same hopes and fears that live in every human heart. That's all it takes. Just seeing, just stopping, just choosing to believe that one person can make a difference. Because one person can. Marcus Thompson did. Patricia Williams did. James Thompson did. David Chen did. And so can you. The story ends here, but the work continues. Somewhere right now, a firefighter is driving to work. Maybe he'll take a different route. Maybe he'll see a little girl with a paper bag. Maybe he'll stop. And maybe, just maybe, that will change everything. Again.